Welcome to today's Expert Insight. I'm Kim Hibbler, CEO of Renaissance Executive Forums North America. It is truly my special pleasure today to introduce our speaker, Robert Hunt. Robert is a partner in Renaissance Executive Forums and has been leading CEO groups in the Dallas-Fort Worth area since 2013. He is also VP and Secretary of our North American Advisory Board for Executive Forums. He can always be counted on for innovative thinking that disrupts accepted norms and pushes us to think on a higher and more productive level. Today's topic is no less. Robert has a team in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that he's very proud to serve with, including Angie Jones, Michael Vizentine, and Wayne Gono, along with his beautiful wife, Kathy.
Beautiful.
Robert is the father of Lauren and James, and you'll find him on social media as the Proud Dude Dad. He's also the author of the book, Nobody Cares Until You Do, and it's due out for release on September 13th, but it's available now for pre-order online. This is a book about the need for personal accountability in our world, and it presents tools to help people stop blaming and making excuses that hold them back. Instead, the book shows you how you can own it and create the life you really want. It's written in Robert's style of humor and candor that I know you will all love. Over the last year, Robert has studied and implemented margin in his own life with significant results. This is one of those rare topics that once you have learned it, you really can't unlearn it because it can be so impactful. So all I can say is proceed with caution, as being introduced to margin can be life-changing. I've had the pleasure of working with Robert for many years, and I've seen his passion for God, his family, and the world around him. I know you will enjoy learning from Robert, so let me turn this over to him now. Welcome, Robert.
Thanks, Kim. That was a great introduction.
Thank you.
I'm going to share my screen, get this fired up here. I'm looking forward to talking with everybody today. Well, I guess I'll just be talking to you, but I'd love to have a chance to have some questions and answer at the end. I'm eager to share with you because what I have been going through has really changed my life. Here's my promise to you. If you give me 100% of your attention for the next 45 minutes, I promise you, I can help you create a process that will help you make better decisions, build deeper relationships, do things more efficiently, and live the life that you really want. So in preparation for our time together, do yourself a big favor. Close your email. Turn off your phone, turn off your watch, and really focus on this so you can let it soak in. We all live such busy lives these days, and I know everyone finds a challenge to get the time to do all the things they feel they should be doing, let alone the things they wish they were doing. We're going to work on that today. Grab a sheet of paper and a pen. I think it will help you capture some of your thoughts. Of course, we're recording this. You can go back and watch it later on if you need to review things again. Also, if you have any questions, you can put it in the comments section, and we'll try and get to them at the end of our presentation. Members of Renaissance Executive Forums here in Dallas, we agree that every time we meet, we're going to be radically transparent, radically open-minded, so we can get the support that we need to be our best. We also engage in thoughtful disagreement, so we can challenge one another and learn to see from other people's perspective. Today, I'm going to ask you to be that same way. Be radically open-minded as I share these concepts. They're very different than what you've ever thought of before. At least it was for me. It'll help you see the world differently if you can keep an open mind. A couple years ago, I spent time trying to find content that I could use to encourage our CEO group members who were really beat down because of COVID. Everyone had been exhausted just trying to keep up with everything. What I found was this book, Margin. I read it, I loved it, I applied it to my life, and I want to share it with you today. The book is written by Dr. Richard Swenson, who decided to step down from his medical profession after he could so he could focus his time on helping people to understand how margin could change their life. This book is written based on his research when he had clients come in with pain, and he found that the underlying issue in that pain was a lack of margin. The book explains that. I like this quote that he says, most people see their limit in the rearview mirror as they blow by it at 100 miles an hour. I think that's a big way to say how overloaded we are. We live lives that exceed our personal limits so often we don't even recognize it anymore. We constantly push past our emotional, physical, and financial limits and have a life without margin. We commit to do 120% in one area, and then we wonder why we feel so exhausted. It's rare to see a life that is pre-scheduled to under 100% of the load, given time to respond to things that come our way, and things always seem to come our way, things that we didn't plan for. We've exceeded our limits so long that we don't even know how to pull back, and we've got our foot stuck on the throttle going forward fast as we can. We're going to take a little bit of time today to slow down and look at how this looks in our lives. When we talk about margin, we're talking about the difference between your limit and your load. This is how you do the math. When you take all the things you can handle at the most, your limit, and you take the current amount you're carrying right now, your load, and you subtract them, that's margin. Most people are unaware of their limits until they pass them. But by then they're so overloaded, burned out, frustrated, defeated that they shut down for a while, sometimes for a long while. But we're used to living without margin, mostly because we didn't even know what it is until now. I've lived that way most of my life. I knew something was wrong and I wasn't sure what it was. I think it was margin. Business leaders today are overloaded. If I had to use one word to explain what I hear from leaders the most, it's the word exhausted. I feel confident to say that most of you on this call today are leading lives of overload. And it's affecting your personal and your professional life. This manifests itself in the inability to focus. It builds anxiety and stress. It leads to a loss of sleep, depression, and anxiety, panic attacks. Are you aware of times when you're approaching the threshold of your limits? Can you see areas of your life where you're currently overloaded? Do you know how this is affecting you? Write down your thoughts if you can think of something right now where you think, right here, I'm overloaded. We'll keep looking at this. It seems odd to me that we should be overloaded when you consider all the advances our society has made in the last 100 years. We have the comfort and convenience that our ancestors could only dream about, yet we're more stressed and overloaded than ever. Our cars have more features. Our paychecks are bigger. We get 2 or 3 weeks of vacation, most of which you don't take. And we still seem so unsatisfied. We have 10 times more the material abundance, but we are not 10 times more satisfied. Most of the advances have been in the material and cognitive environment, while most of the pain is felt in our social, emotional, and spiritual realms. We get more stuff, we learn more stuff, but it's often at the expense of our minds, our bodies, and our relationships with others. We're addicted to continuously increasing more. We expect that everything will be more. We know that stuff is not as important as people, but we don't live like it. Margin helps us create deeper relationships with the world around us and improves the health of our mind, body, and soul. It makes sense to create margin when you think about it. It's room to handle the unexpected, but most people don't do it. Occasionally, you might say to yourself, I think I'm getting close to maxing out my limit. But the reality is by the time you feel it, you've probably already passed it. It's kind of like when you're thirsty, it's because you're dehydrated. If you ignore it too long, you'll get sick. Margin's the same way. Reminds me, I'm thirsty right now. You might appear to be physically okay, but emotionally, you've exceeded your limit long before you realize it. Living life this way can cause irrevocable damage to those closest to us long before we realize we've exceeded our limits. Margin is required to get room to perform with excellence and still have the capacity to respond to changes that come our way. Like this slide shows you, most of us live with very little margin in most areas of our life. You know, at one time, we could probably handle spikes that go above our limit, but in reality, they seem to pile up and come at us all at once. And if you've not created enough emotional energy reserves, you're going to have real problems. I'll tell you a story about that later. Most people I know live in a world that exceeds their limits, but they've done it for so long they think it's normal. Most leaders put more time into their work each week at the expense of family, friendships, sleep, and rest. They have no margin. Most people have less in their bank and more on their credit cards than they want to. No margin. Most leaders carry the burden of their employees, their customers, their investors, their stakeholders, and all of the feelings of those in their family, they take those to bed every night. That's not margin. As I share this information today, I hope you'll consider the idea of creating more margin as an essential way to having the life that you really want. Dr. Swenson says that pain is an indication that something's wrong. Being a doctor, he would know. Our world has a lot of pain, and we usually respond by ignoring it until it cripples us, or by numbing it with drugs and alcohol. Our rehab facilities and our therapist office are bursting at the seams. Progress has given us unprecedented affluence, education, technology, and entertainment. Hey, we walk around with a computer in our pocket or purse that's more powerful than the one that got us to the moon, but it also cuts into our peace and quiet. Doing and getting things has become easier thanks to progress, and we feel we can do and get more and more, so the bar continues to move higher and higher. So we work more and more, and the cycle never ends. The progress we've seen in the last 200 years is truly amazing. It actually becomes so exponential that we can't keep up with it, and it's robbing us of margin. In the old growth model, you'd see there was room to learn and adjust as we slowly move along. But the exponential growth rate of the last 20 years has changed the pace so much that by the time I see a change coming, it's usually past me. And history no longer helps us anticipate what's coming because we're living in this exponential growth rate. Take a look at your own capacity for your company. Many of us have learned to run with less people, less materials, less money. We've done it for so long now, it's becoming the norm. And I think that the world around us, our stakeholders and our employees will expect these kind of results the rest of our lives. The exponential rate of progress has built a mindset in our society that there will never be enough. And we need to constantly be changing, improving, and getting more with no end in sight. Dr. Swenson suggests that the exponential pace of progress is colliding with human limits. Do you agree? Do you even agree that you have limits? Do you live like you have limits? When the pace of progress leads us to drive for more and more, we collide with our limits and often face overload. In my conversations with CEOs and business owners in the Dallas area, I see how many of them are living on overload in one area or another, doing too much, working too many hours, and feeling the load of it all on their shoulders. Due to the incredible amount of things we feel we should get done, we try to do 2 or 3 or 4 things all at the same time. Multitasking is just doing a few things poorly all at the same time. Now, before you get defensive and tell me what a great multitasker you are, remember to keep an open mind for a minute. Many people think they're doing a good job at multitasking because you pull it off all the time. However, you didn't compare the quality of the work, the quality of the decision made, how long it really took you to get it done, or the mental drain that puts on you, and how it affects the next task you have to do compared to what it would be if you did it one at a time. Dr. Swenson refers to a study that showed this test where they had people count backwards from 777 by 7 at a time, 770, 763. And the stress of having to do that, the stress on their mind of having to do that, put such a stress on their body that it was higher heart rate than when they asked them to run really hard for 10 minutes. What the mind can do to your body, there's a connection there. We don't always see how that the effects of overload are happening, but they are there. We also don't factor the potential cost of one mistake. We only measure the pace that we're cranking out work. Some things are not allowed to have mistakes, so we're forced to take the time to slow down, make sure it's done right. But just because we might be willing to allow a mistake, do you want one? We certainly want the airline pilots to be focused and take their time when they're doing the pre-check flight. Why should we be okay to live at a pace where a mistake is more likely to occur? Running on overload is dangerous for you and the world around you. Margin helps you prevent that. Here are some types of overload I'm sure you've seen in your life. Our calendars are booked up weeks in advance. There's way too many choices, from the number of cereal boxes to the number of cable channels to the number of items on the Cheesecake Factory menu. We overcommit. People just can't say no these days. They sign up their kids for multiple sports at a time. They enroll in multiple classes online. They're holding down multiple jobs, making multiple volunteering opportunities. Can you relate to that? There are way more other overloads that we could mention. The book dives into those. Let me remind you of what a very wise man once said. So what do people get in this life for all their hard work and anxiety? Their days of labor are filled with pain and grief. Even at night, their minds cannot rest. It's all meaningless. So I decided there's nothing better than to enjoy food and drink and find satisfaction in work. Then I realized that these pleasures are from the hand of God. My desire for you today is to enjoy the life that God has given you by creating margin so you can avoid overload. The margin to enjoy the simple things in life like family and friends and a drink with a friend. Load is not the enemy. Overload is the enemy. I'm a pro-load person. I love a challenge. I do a lot of things. I rarely rest, and I struggle to keep myself from being overloaded. You might say, I obviously have not exceeded my limits since I'm still functioning. Maybe. Or maybe you're just one straw away from breaking the camel's back. Dr. Swenson showed this chart on page 55 of the book, and it reminds us that there's a limit to where we stop being productive and start wearing ourselves down. The argument is that although you might be getting something done, is it a best use of your time? Could I stop working in this area and go spend time doing something else that feeds my soul and gives me rest and let the productivity stay where it's maxed out? So you can see where the productivity line goes up, and then at A, you start to have it productivity going down, and you're actually continuing to add stress all that time. So your productivity is less. And as you continue to go, you get to those critical place past fatigue where you face exhaustion. We don't know when we move from A to B to C. There's no alarm that goes off. So we need margin to keep us from overloading. I'm not telling you to work less hours. That's your decision. But I'm pointing out that there's a limit to your productivity. And without margin, your ROI starts to go down, even to the point of exhaustion. The idea of limits is hard for us to accept. We feel we can push ourselves to get more by having less sleep, by running faster, being in more meetings, and squeeze it all into our calendar. But your body has limits, even if your desires do not. Your clock has limits, even if your impatience does not. And your calendar has limits, even if your worry does not. Do you believe you have limits? Take a look at this list. See if any of these ring true to you. What kind of limits do you have? Like the number of good decisions you can make in one day? How about the number of angry people you can treat with kindness in a week? We all have limits, but most leaders continue to press beyond what they acknowledge their limits are. Almost like we know they're real, but we don't act like it. If I ask you these questions, you may be able to say, yeah, I believe I have a limit. But when I look at your life, does it show that you believe you have a limit? Like you believe you should have 8 hours of sleep a day, or you believe there's how many really great decisions you can make in a day. You believe that there's a limit, but you're not living like it. You can push yourself to hold your breath underwater for an hour, but at some point, your body demands air and you either jump to the surface or you die. Most things in life don't demand this kind of obedience like this example does. So we push past our limits all the time. Margin recognizes that there are limits, and it helps us to thrive within them. Let me ask you this question. Do you have any areas where you feel you have created a healthy margin today? Simplest example could be your finances. If you spend less than you earn and you save some for emergencies and you follow a budget in writing and you act wisely with your money and you give graciously with your money, you have margin. What are some areas where you often exceed your limit? Maybe the way you book your calendar. Wouldn't it be great if we just had more time?
That's when you start to say, I need more time. Ever tell yourself that? I need more time. That's when all of a sudden everything in your psyche seems to be taking equal space. That email, that problem, that project, that person, that thing, all of this sudden, this overwhelming chaos starts to happen. But the chaos is not in the world, it's in your head. Then we say we need more time. God, wouldn't it be great if I had more time? Well, guess what? Einstein had 24 hours. So did Mother Teresa. So did Da Vinci. So did Bach. Now, I know Bach didn't have email, but he had 20 kids. Take your pick. If I just had 2 more hours. Actually, for most of you, it'd be good news you didn't have 2 more hours, because what would you fill 2 more hours with? The overwhelming confusion and stickiness you may be in. Good news you don't have 2 more hours. It's only 24, because it's not really about time. What's it about? It's about space. The executives that I work with, and I work with a lot and have spent thousands of hours desk side with some of the best and brightest people on the planet, what they're really after is room to think. Room to, as Andy said, get it simple. Room to be able to be innovative, be creative. By the way, how much time does it take to have a good idea? 0. How much time does it take to make a decision about something or to take advantage of an opportunity? 0. You don't need time, but you do need room in your head. And if you have sufficient room in your psyche, you can take advantage of a 3-minute window in an elevator and say something that's absolutely critical and wonderful about it in a great relationship. If you have no psychic bandwidth, you could have 2 hours and waste it playing solitaire. Not that that's a bad thing to do, but it is if some part of you feels like you should be doing something else.
You don't need more time. You need room to think. That's why our CEO group members meet each month to step back and create clarity. You need this too. Making one bad decision during a time of overload can be detrimental to your life, your company, and certainly your relationships. But since most people don't know they've exceeded their limits, we continue to make poor choices when we're not on top of our game. For example, we deceive ourselves when we say we can still perform our work with only 5 hours of sleep, stress in your marriage, problem with the kids, and looming debt. You might be able to physically walk in the office and get things done, but you are not on top of your game. And in many cases, you're only moments away from a hard crash. The only way to avoid this is to establish margin in your life. We must develop the mindset that there are limits in life and act like it. The reality is, no matter how hard you try, you will never get everything done. So choose wisely. Prioritize your life accordingly and then fill in around that. Margin brings freedom and permits rest. It nourishes relationships and creates the ability to serve others. It even allows us to be available for God.
That's when you start.
I played that one.
Say, I need.
Let's try this button. I'm not a professional PowerPoint guy. The word excellence is often misused in the business community. For our time together today, let's define excellence as the best of your ability as you pursue the life you really want. Write that down. The best of your ability to pursue the life you really want. Excellence gets to be determined by you and what you want your life to look like. And as you pursue it to the best of your ability, that is excellence, not what someone else tells you it looks like. Most people are telling me they're doing fine with their responsibilities in life, but they're really basing it on 1 or 2 key areas of their life that overshadow the rest. You need to consider how all the areas of your life are doing when you say that, because that's your ability to pursue the best version of the life you want. That's what excellence should look like. Maybe you think all is well because you're keeping up with life every day, but you won't see excellence in your life if you give 120% to one thing and let other things fall below the 0 line. Does that make sense? In this example, we feel really good about our ability to keep up with things at work, but our family, our faith, and our rest is suffering. Having an amazing, successful business at the expense of your health or your family is not excellence. Having a great financial portfolio, but having no rest or joy is not excellence. I'm not telling you how much effort you should put into each area of your life. I am saying you'll get better results if all the areas of your life are above 0. Being under the stress of a marital problem will affect your ability to make great decisions at work. Heck, even leaving the house after having a fight with your spouse can affect the way you see things at work all day. Having the pressure of debt can skew your decisions in many areas of your life. We need margin in order to keep things above the zero line. So this will require that you adjust to how you view this question: how much is enough? The gap between what I have now and what I could have grows wider and wider as the potential to get more grows. This eats away at the idea of contentment. Your contentment resides somewhere between the 2 points of all there is to have and all I have today. And the set point for your contentment continues to rise as we see other things that we can have or be or do. Once we have something, the satisfaction for that slowly starts to decline. Remember Maslow's pyramid of needs? That a need that is satisfied is no longer a motivator. We move on to chase more and more and more. But remember, it all goes back in the box at the end of your life. So how much do you really need? There are two ways to have enough: continue to accumulate more and more, or desire less. Simplicity is a great way to create margin. Listen carefully to what Dr. Swenson said in his book. Contentment isn't the complacency that defeats any attempt to make things better, but instead it's the willingness to work tirelessly for improvement in all areas of your life, clinging to God rather than the results. I like that. I'm driven. I'm a driven person, but there's more to my life than just how many annual dollars I create, or my house, or anything I can do or achieve. There's a life to be lived full. So in order to live the life you really want, you need to create margin. Are you sensing a trend as I keep talking about margin? Are you starting to agree with me a little bit? What the book looks like, it covers these 4 areas, and what your version of margin will probably be different than someone else's, but something needs to be done. In the book, Dr. Swenson suggests things that he says will help you find margin in 4 areas of your life: your time, your finances, your physical energy, and your emotional energy. I'll touch on each of these briefly. One thing that's important to note at the beginning is that all 3 areas will pull from each other. All the areas pull from each other a little bit, but all 3 of them pull from emotional energy. And since you can't know how much emotional energy you have at any time, you have to work as hard as you can to create margin in the time, finances, and health so they don't pull from your emotional bucket. We'll see as we walk through these areas. Time certainly is the easiest one. You can track it and you can really do things about it. We all have the same 24 hours, same 7 days a week. You can't get any more time. You decide what you do with your time because it's yours. When you don't manage your time well, you create pressure to keep up with it. And you have to you have problems when you cancel or you run late. So we work more hours, we take work home, we walk around with a computer in our pocket. That makes it almost impossible to focus on what is right in front of you. And all this makes us hurried and stressed and overworked and frustrated. And that pulls from our emotional energy bucket. The sad thing is we do it to ourselves. We give our time away too easily, way too easily. Fight for your time. Take it back. It's yours. Use it wisely. Do you struggle with this? Do you try and cram everything in every day? Are you evaluating what's the best use of your time as you work to have the life you really want?
These are roughly 28,835 jelly beans. I counted out 500 of them and used those to weigh the rest. In this pile, there's 1 jelly bean for each day that the average American will live. You might have more beans in your life, or maybe less, but on average, this is the time we have. Here's a single bean. It's your very first day. A special day, but kind of a rough day on everyone involved. Add 364 more and you have the first year of your life. Now, for a sense of scale, here are your first 15 years, 5,475 days, which brings us to the threshold of adulthood. And at that moment, this is the time that we have left. And this is, on average, what we will do with all that time. We will be asleep for a total of 8,477 days. If we're lucky, some of that time we'll be sleeping next to someone we love. We will be in the process of eating, drinking, or preparing food for 1,635 days. We'll be at work, hopefully doing something satisfying, for the equivalent of 3,202 of those days. 1,099 days will be spent commuting or traveling from one place to another, maybe a little bit more if you live in LA. On average, we will watch television in one form or another for a total of 2,676 days. Household activities, like chores and tending to our pets and shopping, will take another 1,576 days. And we will care for the needs and well-being of others, our friends and family, for 564 days. We'll spend 671 days bathing, grooming, and doing all other bathroom-related activities, and another 720 days will go to community activities like religious and civic duties, charities, and taking classes. After we remove all those beans, this is what remains. This is the time that we have left. Time for laughing, swimming, making art, going on hikes, text messages, reading, checking Facebook, playing softball, maybe even teaching yourself how to play the guitar. So what are you going to do with this time? How much of it do you think you've already used up? If you only had half of it, what would you do differently? What about half of that? How much time have you already spent worrying instead of doing something that you love? What if you just had one more day? What are you going to do today?
I love that video. What will you do with the days that God has given you? How will you spend them? Dare I say, enjoy them. Take your priorities in life, put those in first, fill around them. You have all the time you need. You just need to be intentional about how you use them. I cannot convince anyone to adjust their life to add margin, but I know it can be done. I'm doing it right now, and it can help you create the life that you really want. Dr. Swenson gives us some suggestions in his book. I've highlighted them here. Some good ones are learn to say no. That's easy enough. Turn off the TV, turn off the tech, unplug. The book gives you lots of creative ideas, but you'll have to find the ones that work for you. The next area to create margin in is your finances. Just like time, we can measure and track our finances. However, unlike time, we can exceed our finances, and most people do all the time. We spend more than we earn. We just get a loan or a credit card. This is way too easy to do. However, in doing this, you create worry and stress about keeping up with it, and that is drawing out of your emotional bucket. Consumer debt is over $15 trillion in the US, and 64% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. We actually know the logic of money, but we've grown so comfortable living a life of marginless finances. It's socially acceptable to be in debt, to buy things on an impulse, and to spend more than you earn. But is that the life you really want? People think they have margin because they're making minimum payments on their credit cards. That is not margin. And the weight of debt constantly dips into your emotional energy bucket. Being in debt is no fun. It weighs heavy on us and affects the decisions we make every week. Consider the pure joy of getting out of debt. We did it in 2020. It was a drastic effort, but it was well worth it. I'll tell you that another time. Debt-free living is less stress because you don't worry about what might happen if the car breaks down or the refrigerator stops working or you need medical attention. It allows us to give freely when we see others in need. For me, I know that God has provided me with the opportunity to earn this money, and he expects a great return for his investment. He only asked me to give a tithe from what I've earned, but he also wants me to be responsible with the other 90% that it aligns with my faith in him. Here's some things from the book that are simple enough. Start with a budget. Do you have a written budget that you review and follow and live accordingly? Give money away. It feels awesome to give money away. And then money's not so important if you're willing to give it away, right? You're not holding on to it tightly. Note that your effort to increase your income can eat away from your time and your health. So be careful that you're not trading away margin in one area at the detriment of another. It's probably better to work on things that will reduce your expenses than focusing on getting more money. Frankly, whatever you get, you'll spend anyway. So might as well just figure out ways to spend less. As long as you work to do these things and you keep all the other things above the zero line, you're creating healthy margin. Dr. Stevenson mentions these in his book, Swenson. I said his name wrong. Should know it. The next one is physical energy. Our health is often pushed aside when things get crazy. It's hard to determine how much margin we have in our physical energy. In other words, how much hurt can I do to my body and still be okay? How much pizza and beer can I have and still fit in a bathing suit? How many few hours of sleep can I get and still go to work on time? There are things we can measure that give us a view of our health and the amount of margin we're going to create in our physical energy. Things like your weight, what you eat, your exercise routines, the hours of sleep, your blood pressure, things that we can see that are going in and things that are resulting. We can measure a lot of that. We could do things that we know will create the margin. So when there comes to a time where we have to put out more physical energy, we have the reserves to do it. And remember, we may survive the abuse we do to our health, but in doing that, we're probably pulling out from our emotional energy at the same time. Dr. Swenson shares that he's seen this in his practice, things like this that have helped people create physical energy margin. Drinking water and getting sleep is one of the easiest things you can do to improve your health. We know that eating wisely and exercising also creates better health. One of the things that I've learned is the idea of observing a Sabbath, a true day of rest. Look at this, the statement. 95% of people look forward to the weekend to rest, but 52% of them report they are more exhausted by Monday than they were before the weekend. That's nuts. We don't even rest well. Dr. Swenson says everyone needs a true day of rest from doing whatever drains their minds, their bodies, and their souls. God created the Sabbath and asks us to set it apart as a day to stop and to rest and enjoy the life he's given us. For too many years, I used my Sabbath day to run errands, finish all the stuff I couldn't get done on Saturday, on Sunday. Not anymore. Now it's a true day of rest, and we look forward to it because it feeds my soul. We sleep in, we work out, we enjoy church, we go to lunch with friends, read a book, take a nap. We do fun stuff. It's downtime. It was hard at first to get into that groove, but when we truly unplug, it's awesome. And I'm really ready for the week ahead because of the time I've taken to rest on the Sabbath. You need a true day of rest. The results of resting will pay you back 100 times over. If you're needing more help with this, there's a book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. It's really awesome. It's helped me to understand the idea of a Sabbath. Okay, last one. This one's hard. Emotional and energy is impossible to measure. We don't know our limits until we exceed it. Marital issues, pains from your childhood, problems with friends, issues with your kids, worry about the future of your business. All this pours and pulls energy out of your emotional bucket. It's just too much. If we deplete our emotional energy, we have nothing to give the world around us because we're in survival mode. And you don't know when you're out of emotional energy until you're out. I experienced this recently when caring for my older sister who has dementia. She was staying with us and she got really sick on a Friday night. I'll skip all the disgusting details, but I'll tell you that for 2 days, our house was just filled with sickness. We took her to the hospital and that caused her to panic. So that was more emotional drain. So besides the loss of sleep for 2 nights and all the drama, we finally got her checked into a hospital. We spent the next day trying to get the house clean, get it back to order. So by the time that Monday rolled around, I was exhausted, physically and emotionally drained. But of course, I had a breakfast meeting with a client. So I drove down there, sat myself down in a chair, and I cried. And I cried, and I couldn't stop crying. The waitress gave me a free breakfast because I was so miserable. I thought I could show up and just tough it out. I was wrong. Ever have a moment like that? You show up at a meeting, someone says something simple, and you just explode all over your team. And they're looking at you like, what's with that guy? And you spend the next few days trying to do damage control. Too often, we drain our emotional energy to critical levels and we never see it coming. I mentioned this before, but it's worth repeating. The three areas are constantly pulling from the reserves of your emotional energy bucket. And since you can't know how much emotional energy you have until it's too late, you have to work hard to create margin in those first three areas: time, finances, and health, so that they don't pull from the emotional bucket. The best way to keep emotional energy full is to create margin in the other three areas of your life. Here's some things that Dr. Swenson says about creating emotional energy. Some of them are pretty simple. Seek reconciliation is a great one. Staying mad at somebody else doesn't hurt anyone more. It hurts you the most. They may not even be aware that you're mad at them. Create healthy boundaries. That's smart. Laugh and cry. Do fun stuff and let your emotions be real. Be a real human being. Dr. Swenson says that healthy relationships are one of the best protections against stress-induced damage to your health. Healthy relationships, though, require time that you invest to nurture and build it, and that will require margin in your calendar. But the reward is priceless. One of the values of being in our Renaissance executive peer groups is that ability to have people pour back into you. Our group members tell me all the time how the friendships in our groups support them and help them be their best. Being open and honest with other people in your group allows them to pour back into you and fill your emotional reserves. Our group members genuinely care for and love each other. They're the best. You should have something like that in your life that feeds your soul and keeps you strong. Lastly, my faith in Jesus Christ is a big deal to me. Margin creates room for the movement of the Spirit of God in my life. I want to be available when God brings someone into my life that he wants me to spend time with. If my life is overloaded, there's no room for God, and I miss out on the blessings he planned for me. If I overextend myself and I become overloaded, I don't have time for God or for the others he brings that he wants me to care for. If I don't create margins in my finance, I don't have the money to give graciously when God brings someone in my path and he wants to use that money he helped me earn to bless someone else. Now, I'm not telling you how to run your business or your health or your finances. I am telling you, though, I'm not telling you how to live your faith either. I'm telling you, though, that faith is a part of what makes us whole, and you shouldn't ignore it. As a follower of Jesus Christ, I find guidance from the Bible, and it helps me to see my time, my finances, and my body from God's perspective, and it gives me peace that pours back into my emotional bucket. I want to remind you, it's okay to pursue excellence in your faith with the same passion or even greater than you do your company, your health, or your finances. Dr. Swenson is a follower of Jesus Christ just like I am. And this book is written with the focus that your life should be about living out who you really want to be. So whether or not you share a faith in Christ, I want you to consider reading this book and be intentional to live the life that you want to live and to live out the things you believe. You need to stay radically open-minded when you read this book to get the most out of it. This book will challenge you as you consider all aspects of your life in the view of what you really want your life to be and what matters most to you. Don't feel guilty to pursue the life you really want. It's your life. So what's the next step? I suggest you order the book. And there's some worksheets I'll show you in a second. You can read those and apply them to your life. If this has meant something to you, get your team together and watch the video with them and help them pursue excellence in their life also. Tell your family, tell your team, tell the people in your CEO group about the changes that you want to do to create the margin in your life, and let them inspire you and encourage you to be your best. This is where you can download the worksheet, margindfw.com. You can download it there. Those 4 areas I just reviewed. It'll give you a place to think about and make note of what you want to do to work on that. I'll end our time together by sharing one other passion I have. Kim mentioned at the beginning of our time together, and that's the idea of a personal accountability. In order to have the life you really want, you need to stop making excuses or blaming other people and own it. This book will show you how. My friend Salem Thion and I wrote this book because we wanted it to change people's lives. It's going to be available September 13th, but it's available to pre-order now if you want. You can get your order in early. We want to teach the world to stop making excuses and blaming others for the things that happen in life and to create the life they really want, like we've just been talking about. So maybe I'll come back someday and share the ideas behind this book if I'm invited back. You can learn more at nobodycaresbook.com. I hope you'll read that book someday. That is the end of my presentation, Kim. Do we have any time for questions?
Thank you. We have almost 14 minutes for questions.
Oh, man, that's a lot of time.
You did great. You did great with the time. Wow. I'm feeling like you might have been talking directly to me. I think I'm in a little bit of a season of overload with it being summer here in the US and time to be with family, time to take some time off. And yet I'm feeling that crunch because we need to do these things, right?
Yeah.
But being completely transparent, I'm guessing all of us felt at some point when you were talking that our lives, maybe the margins aren't quite where they should be. My favorite word in everything that you spoke about was we get to create margin. And you gave us some really great ideas for how to do it, how to get started. Thank you. We can take those first steps, but now we have the awareness.
Yeah.
So my question for you while we're waiting for some questions to be asked is, what is the biggest reason people would not embrace the concept of margin when it gives us that ability to be accountable to making a better life for ourselves? Why wouldn't we embrace it?
I think really, truly, most people don't even think this way. I never thought this way till I read the book. We're all very reactionary. And so when you're doing something and something comes up, you go deal with it. And most of the leaders that we work with, they are constantly telling us they have to put out fires and that their time doesn't belong to themselves, but they give it away. You know, having an open door policy where everyone comes in and constantly asks you, you know, what should I do? Hey, the UPS guy's here. What should I do? Take the package. You know, we're creating this environment where people are not empowered to do things on their own. The more that we're available to answer all their questions. So once you become aware that there's this concept that margin is there to help optimize your life, it seems almost foolish not to pursue it. So I think the first part is we just need to talk about it. We need to understand that the reason you keep hitting overload is because you're not proactively creating margin. Again, it's not about how many hours you work. It's about prioritizing what really is important that you should work on and be able to get that done and then accept whatever else comes your way. So have a cadence and a pace that actually makes the day fun and rewarding, but that requires proactive planning.
Yeah. Well, I can see you've been doing that because when you have something that's due to the team from being on our advisory board, it's like there and done the next minute. You seem to be moving effortlessly. And I know that even just in this last week, I've asked for several days of your time for travel, for a meeting that we're going to be having. And you were able to come up with that. But I have a question. The reason
I wasn't going to take that meeting was because in the past, I've been down to the last 10 minutes before a retreat trying to learn slides. Yes. And I just thought that's not excellence in delivering the best for our group members. And so last year I committed to have it learned a month ahead of time and even did dry run-throughs where I got people's feedback. So when I told you I couldn't go, Kathy goes, why can't you go? You have time. You'll be done a month ahead of time. Why not go? And she's right. I've got Angie who's organizing everything. Michael's going to be help running the day. Kathy's got so much. If you build your life with the priorities of what matters most, you always have time. And then you can prioritize what you want to do. And so coming to be with you guys is easy because I won't have to be down to the last minute.
Well, there you go. So I can see that margin has affected your business in a very positive way. And, you just expressed that. Are you still getting it all done? Or because I feel like most of us on this call, and I'm just making an assumption, that our businesses and our careers are maybe one of the tallest bars that we have when we look across, our margins.
Yeah.
So since you've, adopted this philosophy and you're creating margin in your life, are you still getting it all done at work? I just need to know
Yeah,
that.
I love that term. I love that term, getting it all done, because what is the all? And
Yeah.
if all is every single thing that comes in your inbox, no, the answer is no, I'll never get it all done. And we have to acknowledge that we'll never get it all done. Ben Randolph, one of our group members, been a member 7 years. I remember years ago, he told me, just because you send me an email does not mean I have to reply to it. And I was like really offended. Like, wait, that's my email. Why wouldn't you want to reply to it? And he's right. Everything that comes to you is not necessarily worthy of your attention. And so the way that we've gone out to figure what all looks like is we go back to our purpose. What is our purpose? What is the vision of our business? What's our mission? Why are we here? Our number one thing is to honor God in our lives. And in our business, our number one thing is to help our clients remove obstacles that keep them from being their best. If we focus on that and we do those things first, a lot of stuff won't get done, but it's not part of the all. It's just a thing. The all is, am I caring for and loving my clients? Am I there for them when they need me? Do they say that their life is better because they're part of our peer groups? Yes. And those are the things that I focus on, because that's what really matters.
So it sounds like to me, and I'd love to see some comments and questions in the chat. But you had to go back to initially figuring out what your priorities were. And I know for you, your priorities are very clear. But when you looked at your margins, was your time, did you have margins in the area that was most important to you? And like, you didn't really have to reprioritize, but you had to create, right?
Yeah.
A way to build them up. How did you do that?
We never had margin. That was never a topic before. But as we stood back and looked at it and said, what does it look like to have margin? If Angie comes into the office and needs to talk about something, do I have time to listen to her? Or am I so busy that I can't talk to her? Then I've missed a chance to serve one of my employees. That's wrong. And so we are intentional about not overbooking days and knowing that the emotional margin is sucked away through the other things. I used to plan meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, and I'd have nothing for the other people as the day went on. I mean, Kim, I know how busy you are. You got a call, then a call, then a call, then a call. How's that fourth call really being served by you? Especially when your kids run in and go, I need this, Mom. And you're distracted by that. Or you see an email come through that has bad news. What energy level do you really have to give to someone your best at that moment? So we have to make rules that say there's a half an hour gap between everything we do. So I can get a drink, go to the bathroom, talk to someone, breathe a little bit, get ready for the next meeting. What you and I do for a living is we serve leaders. If I don't have my A game on and someone comes to me with a really important issue they need to talk about, and I'm distracted because I have not managed my time well, or I've got other things on my heart, or I'm drained, I don't serve them well. So we had to block out time. That was one way we had to change our way we looked at our calendar. Angie's been great to help me with that. We looked at our finances. If we worry that every month we're going to run just to the final bit of the money, then it's panic and stress. We had to manage our cash flow. We had to put away for rainy day serving. And we started a giving fund where when something comes up that we didn't plan for, we have money set there that we can give graciously. So we just had to change and organize stuff. I still get money that I want to live by. I'm not hurting. Things are great, but I've balanced it and taken the stress off my emotions by having margin in my finances. Those are just two of the areas.
Yeah, I mean, this impact that it has on emotions, and especially if you have like little kids like I do around, you're going to sort of take your anger a little bit more out on them, because that's where you can kind of like, it comes out, right?
Right.
And it's not good. And then I think too, those emotions but they go back and hit you in your physical areas of your life. And it starts to break down the physical. So it's just this circle of things that if we don't gain this awareness and we don't create these margins, it's, it just, I don't know, kind of takes.
Well, we go back to the unmeasurable part of things. If you're in a meeting with someone and you're talking with them and you think that right now you're on top of your game and you didn't get a good night's sleep and you've been not feeling that great. Remember the old days where we used to go to work when you had the flu? You'd be like, I'm in my office, don't come in, I got the flu. But now people are like, oh, COVID, if you have a runny nose, don't go to work, right? So we've changed a little bit of that. But for the longest time, we would drag our sorry butt to work, put it in a chair, and pretend like we were doing our best. You're not. You're sick. You're sick. You're not thinking clearly. And you're going to make a big decision about a contract with a customer when you're emotionally drained, you're deprived of sleep, you're not feeling good, and you think that somehow you'll magically be a great leader at that moment. It's foolishness. You are on that declining productivity scale. When you let your emotions get that low, you're actually not helping yourself. You're hurting you and the company.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, we have a question from Lisa, and she's asking, how have your margins and priorities changed post-pandemic? I mean, we're all coming into this new world of post-pandemic. What's changed for you in your margins and your priorities?
I think I'm always very, very personable person, and I always made time for my clients and time with my wife as a priority and time with my family as a priority. I think, though, that I've changed the mindset of what matters to people. We're just sick of Zoom calls as we're on this video call here. We're sick of them, right? So I have prioritized more face-to-face time with people where I'm leaving a healthy block. There's nothing worse than saying, hey, let's have an hour together, show up late, be distracted, have your phone ring the whole time, and then leave early because you're running behind to the other appointment. I'm making healthy room to invest in relationships, because that's one of the things I missed the most during the pandemic was the time with the friends I love so much. And I adjust my workload so I can always have that. And I'm available to people more than I ever was before.
Device free even?
Oh, device free. Our last group meeting with the key executives, I mandated, really strongly asked, can we please put away our phones, our watches, everything, our computers, just for one meeting? And at the end of the meeting, two of the guys came up and said, that's the best meeting we ever had. And they're the ones who are constantly checking their phone and being distracted by things and leaving to go take a phone call. And by really, truly unplugging and really being here in the moment, you get more value, especially with your employees. You go into their office to talk to them, and the whole time you're talking to them, your phone's lighting up and you're looking at them going, that doesn't show you care about them. And you're probably not hearing the whole truth. Or what about the things that aren't said? You didn't read their body language or their face when they said, yeah, I can do it. But in their heart, they're saying, I hate my job. You're missing that because you're on your phone instead of truly connecting with people.
Yeah, totally. And you mentioned your watch. I never take my watch off ever. And so I'm always connected, even if I have my phone down. And when we started, I took off my watch so that I could fully listen to what you were saying. Thank you for that reminder. Thank you for that reminder. What other questions do we have from the audience? I'd love to get a few more questions. I think we have one more minute. One more minute if anybody else has a question or anything you'd like to leave us with, Robert.
I'll add to this concept that, this year has been a really growing year for me. Margin has helped me over the last couple of years, but this year I've been implementing it. And now as the book comes out, I'm really thinking about, what do I want my life to be like? It's sad that we, for some reason, think that we can't have the life we want. The life I want is not about how many dollars I make or how important I am. The life I want is, I want to spend time with my wife every day. She's my best friend. I want to laugh more. I want to enjoy conquering big challenges and changing lives. But that's not something that usually shows up on a spreadsheet. I think you need to really own what it is you want in life and really intentionally chase that. And when we make excuses for why we can't, they're just lies, and no one believes you, and nobody cares. And that's how I called the book Nobody Cares, because you can make as many excuses as you want and hold yourself back. But if you truly want the life you want, you're going to have to make changes in your life to achieve that.
That's so, so true. And I have to say, your business in the last year, it has just thrived. You are thriving. I always enjoy working with you and Kathy and your team. You got a great thing going down there in Dallas, and you inspire all of us. So I want to thank you for your time today. Everybody enjoy the book, and let's take those first steps together.
I love it. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Thank you.
Bye.
Everybody have a great week.